Hey everyone, today we're going to do the deck highlights for set 9, which is coming out at the end of this week. And what is this deck highlights video about? Well, you know, before every major release in Japan, every set release in Japan, I do make some preliminary videos on like how I want to build the decks. And then it gives you a good start, at least a good base for you to build on. You're playing in the Japanese game or you're just like playtesting way ahead. This one, since English gets released way later, we actually have the good time to look at other decks at tournaments, at, you know, just other players, how they've built the decks, and, you know, compile them here so that when you start off your English deck testing, you'll be at a better spot than, you know, before, right? And we can kind of update all the decks that we kind of talked about, and maybe even talk about some new things too, right? You know, we basically look at, you know, decks every day, or nearly every day on this channel, all right? Monday, Thursday, yeah, a lot of decks. So this will at least give you a good compilation on some of the good ones that you can start off with. How I choose is basically from major tournaments first, right? So, you know, if like official Bushiroad tournaments or even VGCSs in Japan, both of them are rather competitive in their own ways. But then, you know, if we don't have, you know, a deck that topped in the last X weeks that was out, then we go to locals, and then from there on, yeah, I just make some stuff up. There are some differences though, right? Like in English, we all know about the PR stuff. Some of them aren't released here yet, so I make some changes just depending on if they're out or not. So first off, let's kind of get started with the grade 10 deck, the meme deck, right? Grifo, I can't say the name, dude. Grifogila, right? So this deck actually topped a locals on the first week it came out. I don't know how many people were at that locals. That's the whole time we've seen the deck. I think the deck is pretty bad. But if you want to build a meme deck, here it is. Like, we talked about this meme deck before, right? Since you're grade 10, you can play grade 4s. Isn't that crazy? So at some point, you can start swinging with multi-attack Esmeralda on a Dragontree marker. And yeah, that's kind of it. The rest of the deck is just defense. Meteor Flare, nice, you know, nice retire. Yeah, that's literally it. The deck's not that good, guys. Unfortunately, it's just not that great. But if you want to build it, you can. Your ride line's pretty straightforward. It's your calamities and the overtrigger, and you know, this grade 0 ride. But for some reason, decklog doesn't let me put this in. Can't do it yet. Technology. Yeah, that is it. This is going to be a quick one for this because it's just not a great deck. But, you know, if you want some meme potential, let's go for it, right? Next we have is Veerman's Bruce. So this one is just, as your thing is, this one actually topped a locals one, right? Veerman's Bruce didn't really do well in major tournaments. That's kind of it. It's kind of it. This set was more like, set 9 was more of an upgrade for like the older stuff, I feel like. But some of the big things was, you know, you run Edens, you know, Stephanie is in just to buff up your Vanguard to be 18k. And then with this, you can run Megan, right? If you don't like playing Counterblast, you know, games, managing resources. Jared does allow you to pump up more Diablo's powers, so you can just pump up that even bigger power, right? And then just restand it with that Veerman's Bruce. And that's just kind of that. Game plan, very, very simple. You have a counter charger now with the new grade 3 Diablos, so slightly more manageable, even though you're running a lot of Counterblast cards. But also, you know, you don't really have to worry that much about soul anymore, which is a nice plus. It's a good thing to have, right? Not having to worry about that resource. Next we have is Unica. I'm sure a lot of people want to build it simply because she looks cool, right? That's pretty much how it is. Funnily enough, if you look at the Japanese prices, Unica is one of the most expensive cards out of all of them. So yeah, it is what it is. Not many differences from the preliminary builds just because there's not that many options. I think, you know, Clean Sweep Dragon, this one is just the biggest card from set 9. One of the biggest Dark States cards from set 9. Allows this deck to half work. Let's put it this way, right? You know, you have a decent amount of Vanguard pressure from Unica herself. You know, big, you know, extra drive checks as crits, right? You have some extra retires. At least, like, you get to board wipe with, like, Clean Sweep and Unica, and then force your opponents to have to commit more cards into the field, while also having to defend, like, from your more threatening attacks, I guess. The one thing that has been changed is the Gungaram additions. So this is kind of like a new tech into a lot of the Dark States decks, especially now that, you know, Chronojet got a restriction, so you can't run GG with Swirler. But Gungaram is just kind of splashed into a lot of decks, Dark States deck, that don't really gain any advantage. So I've noticed this deck being put into future builds of Dredule that people are testing out, because, you know, if you don't get pluses, at least Gungaram gives you a plus. It also gives you a soul charge as well. So, you know, something like Unica and all that doesn't really have that many options of just like drawing cards compared to like the other, you know, plussing decks, right? You look at Messiah, just free cards everywhere. Gungaram at least helps you a bit in that regard. So this is just kind of a nice tech that they're putting up. If you don't have Gungarams, I do think you should start getting them again, simply because, you know, people like to swirl in Gungaram. That's just pretty much it. Next we have is the Grandfia deck. So Grandfia, I know people have been memeing around with a with things like, you know, Inlet Pulse because 4 attacks, right? That was in the preliminary builds. That's for testing. Now people are just running other stuff. So basically just smack big, right? Smack big. Get this funny looking dragon up a lot of power. This one gets 10k by itself by the effect, and then you can pump it up with this dragon as well. But then one thing that we don't have in English that JP has is the Grandfia promo. So there is a promo, like a flower girl thing that got released that gives another plant, that gives a plant token during the beginning of the battle phase, and then allows you to counterblast 1 to draw 1. We don't have that, so kind of just replace this copy with just 2 of this, which lets you retire 2 regards, which can be, you know, 2 tokens to draw a card and get 5k. So kind of similar, but not so much. If you don't like it, just replace it with something else. But yeah, that's just kind of the filler in for the promo. Otherwise, this Grandfia pretty much just been topping locals once in a while. Haven't really been making a huge splash, so this is just where it's at the moment. I know a lot of other players have been trying it out, but it is what it is, right? It is what it is. This one, we have B Heroes. Again, another deck that has gotten some decent support. So we have this new Galactic B Hero Bold Sales. A lot of people hyping up. This is going to be the savior of B Heroes. Not so much. I think the better card is actually, well, actually, it's not the better card. These two basically do a lot of work, but Aim and Robust allows you to get the last few bases that you're missing, right? So the one of the big problems about this deck before was that you get the first base, you probably will have a second base just from the mulligan, but how are you getting your third and fourth? And Robust is the answer to that question. However, this deck does require quite a bit of counterblast. You are going to need a bit of counterblast management, because, you know, Robust requires a counterblast, Bold Sales requires a counterblast, but, you know, this effect is just so good, right? Just so good. It lets you sustain a bit better compared to before, lets you reuse some cards, and then Dianos requires a counterblast, but you might consider not using this counterblast much, because it doesn't really give power. I mean, it doesn't give you advantage, it does give power, but sometimes who needs power, right? Sometimes you just don't need that power. Crit might be nice, but by the time it gets up and running, it might be too late. And the only other interesting new card that we've put in is the Lloyd as Koreath, which allows you to plus a bit in this deck as well, right? So when you play a base, you might be able to CD1 and just get another card from the top 5, which is nice, right? That's nice. It's a nice extra card. So yeah, otherwise the rest of the deck is just pretty much the old stuff. A lot of this deck did run a lot of draws though. This was a local shopping list as well, so do as you will with it, right? Upgrade it, make it stronger. It's up to you. But onto the stronger decks, I feel like, of the entire set. So the first one we have is Avantgarda. This deck did get a PR in the JP side, but there is builds that have, you know, well, there is one build that topped a VGCS without the PR, and this is it. This is pretty much it. The main thing about this deck is to get your Persona Rides going. You have to have a Persona Ride. If you don't have a Persona Ride, you lose. Well, you probably don't lose, but your life gets way more difficult because the pressure you output becomes way less. It becomes very sucky. You do use quite a lot of counterblast in this deck, but because luckily because your Brant Gate, you just run 4 Moonbeams to kind of solve that issue, and it's kind of help your soul, even though this deck really doesn't have that many soul issues We're running the Welstra operator support, Freiheit, simply because it can search for a Persona Blast. Persona Ride, not a Persona Blast. And the other one is just the Fagel, which lets you reuse your set orders, and basically that's just the cycle, right? That's pretty much the cycle. You know, get your Persona Ride, get your thing up, restand, hopefully hit a bunch of yellows and an OT. That's the good life. Very simple deck, but you know, because it's a restanding overlordish deck in a Brandgate setting, it's scary in its own right. Right, it's scary in its own right. Hopefully get the PR. This deck will get even stronger with it, so will be pretty cool to see. But by far the best deck so far is Welstra, right? This is basically the main deck that has been buffed in set 9. No doubt. This went from like a bad deck, like a really bad deck, like an F tier deck, to probably maybe a lot of people can consider to be like a tier 1 deck or a very, very high tier 2 deck, right? If you like the decimal points, it's tier 1.5, I think is a good way to put it. We are missing things. We are missing the Assembler PR in English. But this list topped, I think was Deluxe, right? Deluxe or VGCS, one of them. And it wasn't running Assembler. It actually just wasn't running Assembler. So pretty cool, right? We can just bring it onto English. But what it was missing was the dog, right? There's a dog PR, a dog product that we just don't have. But when you test the deck quite a bit, you realize you don't really need that dog, right? The dog is nice to have, but you probably just don't need it. What we're running is another tech that a lot of Welstra decks were running, and it's the prison tech. So, you know, you look at this, you go, this isn't a Blitz, right? This isn't Welstra. This isn't the Welstra ride line. What you're doing with this is you're basically riding this and you're getting a prison. And what are you going to do with the prison? Well, the prison can be used to discard, and you know, just a nice plus just to discard, to throw away for the ride line. Or you can actually use it, right? You can actually use it, just play it down, soul charge 3, and that's good. When you play this deck, you realize that you do go through a lot of soul. To fully combo with Freiheit, you need to use a Soul Blast 2, and you know, sure, you can get a few soul with your orders and all that, but getting even more soul with the prison is lots of value as well. So I like having that option, right? I like having the option. Very, very cool. Otherwise, the rest of the deck is pretty similar to the original build. The player was running 3 Iskra, which is interesting. But also, just because they were running 2 dogs, we only need to run 1 prison. There's no way we're running multiple prisons. I just added in the accounting department head, just for extra counter charge as well. Because, you know, you do use like 2 CB a turn, use a lot of soul a turn. Of course, this does require a Soul Blast 1, but because we're running a Soul Charge 3 card here, then it's fine, right? It's fine. So pretty much that. Very, very scary deck. Very, very scary deck. Just make sure you draw the Freiheits. Unfortunately, because we just don't have the Assembler, we don't have that extra sequence of that going into another search to the Freiheits. So it's slightly weaker in that regard. But overall, otherwise, when you just draw it, and when it just goes, very, very scary deck to have. For Springfest, for sure, I think people will be considering this deck. And yeah, that is it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Pretty quick video this time, because there's not that many decks that are super significant, I think. Set 9 does have a lot of staples. I think a lot of the Dragontree cards are pretty strong. And then, you know, some of these Brandgate stuff is really crazy. So take a look at, keep an eye out for that, right? And a lot of these cards, like the Unica stuff, if you want it for set 10, it's like a set 9 to set 10 deck. So you probably will need cards from this. These are just some good starting points, I think, for where you want to build some of these new decks. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you all next time. All right, bye.